Welcome to Now Found. My name is Courtney Cohen. Have you ever placed expectations on yourself or on others? Do you look at a situation and expect it to turn out one way just to get frustrated when it turns out a completely different way? The Apostle Paul said in Philippians 4 that I have learned how to be content. How to be content. And he faced hunger, near starvation, beating after beating after beating. Being stoned. He faced a ridiculous set of circumstances over the course of his ministry. And in this late book of his life, he wrote, I have learned how to be content in any and every circumstance. How could he say such a thing? Some commentators tend to believe that Paul could say that because he had released expectations. When we live ruled by our expectations, we are believing a lie. We're believing a lie that we have all knowledge that pertains to a certain situation, or we might be believing a lie that we are somehow in control of all people and time and circumstances and places. We might also have the expectation that others can somehow read our minds and know what we want to happen and that they will help us make that happen without us even communicating a word. I'm sure that nobody here listening struggles with those, but I do. I have struggled with expectations my entire life. And when I live bending to those expectations, that brings such frustration and such disappointment into my life and into my day-to-day, especially in the midst of all the blessings and the wonderful things that are happening. The biggest problem with expectations is that expectations that are separate from anything that God has told us specifically or said in His Word, expectations that are based on anything other than that are rooted in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, maybe you've heard of this tree. It was an actual tree in the Garden of Eden, and on this tree grew a substance called the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil. And when we are relying on our expectations, we're relying really on our own knowledge of what is good and what is evil. Well, what happened when they ate from that tree? They experienced death in their spirit, in their souls, and ultimately in their bodies. And then they passed that death on to us. When we live our lives expecting things to happen a certain way, that is living rooted in death. And that's why expectations most often lead to disappointment and to frustration with living this life of ours. When we take all of our judgments and our sense of right and wrong and what should be and place it on a situation, that's only going to lead to our disappointment. God says, learn to be content. How do we do that? Well, we have to find our source in something other than our own knowledge, and that source has to be Him. It has to be life. It can't be in death. God has to be our complete and only source. And when He is, then we can set aside our expectations and we can trust that He's going to guide us through. He's going to provide what we need. He's going to give us everything that we need when we need it. And that He'll be there to walk with us through every moment. I have a free resource for you today. It's called Finding Faith That Overcomes. And in this little ebook, there are some powerful truths. It's a 7-day devotional about 7 real life people who are flawed and imperfect, and yet they lived big lives with huge faith, and they overcame obstacles in their ways, obstacles that are the same kinds of things that we face today. So I pray that this is a huge blessing in your life, and that this resource is something that will be invaluable to you. Thank you so much for being here, and always remember, you are never too lost to be found.